Welcome to pattern making class. This is Annette Julie and we are working on our tailored two-piece sleeve. So please go ahead and watch the prior videos so you can get to this point. Here we have our upper sleeve, and in the last video we put on the seam allowance and hem allowance, but I left the cap for a moment just in case we need to do a little bit of equalizing. Now we have our undersleeve. We need to draw a grain line and place this on a piece of paper, but we also need to make sure that it's going to walk with our upper sleeve. Okay, let's go ahead and pop a new grain line on here. From right here, where we have a very important notch, to right down here at the wrist. Now let's go ahead and walk these sleeves together, and we're going to see if we have to change them. This one still needs seam allowance, so I still have the opportunity to modify it. Here's where we see that we have the ease for the elbow, so look, we're going to jump that over, and there's that ease. That walks perfectly. Let's check the front. This is where we might have to add a little, because remember we got rid of a little bit there. So there we go here. That looks really nice too. Good. So this is ready to go onto another piece of paper. Let's get a grain line in the middle of that piece of paper. Let's go ahead and match our grain lines at the top and the bottom, and leave enough for your seam allowance and hem allowance. That looks good. Great, that's matching. Let's go ahead and take this down. You can always trace this off, but I like my students to have a working pattern that they can see what the work was and what they did. They can come back to that as a point of reference in the future. A couple more pieces of tape, and we're ready to do a little bit of truing. If we have any points, we better smooth things out. That looks good. Let's go ahead and put on our 1/2 inch seam allowance. putting this on our undersleeve. And then now down here at the wrist, we'll add the same hem allowance we had on the other one on our upper sleeve. I did 1.5 inches plus another 1/2 inch, total of 2 inches. Right here, this notch, this is going to match to your side seam. Let's draw our 1/2 inch seam allowance. Almost done. Let's get that curve ruler in there and blend everything. And I blended it a little bit right there. Brought that up a little bit. Very, very important notch. Now, you could continue up and make a really long point up here with your seam allowance on both sides, but that's not really very useful. It's great to come along from the tip, go up 1/2 inch, and we'll cut this part off. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring some notches out. Here were those elbow notches for the back. Let's go down here to the wrist and fold that seam allowance up. So now we have the hem underneath, and now when we go ahead and cut out the underseams, we'll have a nice matching angle. So the hem is folded up. And when I go ahead and cut out this underseam, I'm cutting out the hem at the same time. So it gives us the same angle. We're cutting up the underseam. That was the front underseam, and here's our back underseam. Down here at the wrist, this is where we have the hem that's folded up. We're doing our underarm sleeve curve. We blended that, made sure it didn't come to a point. And we're cutting off those little towers or points that can continue up there for a long time. Take those guys off. There's that 1.5 inch seam allowance, hem allowance that we have here for the bottom. Right, we have the 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches. This is our hem. Let's go ahead and put arrows on our grain line. And then this is our jacket. This is our tailored 2-piece sleeve. And this is also the undersleeve. We would cut 2 self fabric. You can always put your name and the date. And we'll do some notches here. We have that notch over there.